folks, and welcome to episode 42 of the Modern Agile Show. I am super excited to be here with Ellen Gottesdiener. She is the CEO of EBG Consulting. She is a product coach. She's a veteran Agilist. She's an author of several books. And it's a thrill to have you here, Ellen. Thank you for joining.
It's great to be here, Joshua.
So I know that your latest book is something that I really was excited to get my hands on. It's been out a few years now, I think, right?
Yeah.
But at the time when it came out, it was like this is like, you know, a lot of what you've learned over the many years. Discover to deliver.
Right.
What is that about for the viewers? You know, what could you say is the main message of your book?
Well, I guess part of the motivation behind the message of the book is that we were noticing that a lot of teams were very much focusing just on delivery and not so much on discovery. So they were building a lot of the wrong stuff quicker and faster, maybe better. And so getting people to get on the same page with a shared understanding of the why and the what, and continually checking that. That's why we use this Venn diagram as the image: discover, deliver, discover, deliver. And we were noticing a lot of misunderstanding and people missing each other on the topic of what it was that they were going to build, as well as why. And maybe over a bit of an overdependence on stories as a way to strictly have conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the essence that people have drawn from the book over the years is looking at product needs across 7 product dimensions instead of, you know, traditional requirements or a feature or a story. So looking more holistically to have deeper, what we like to call structured conversations, because, you know, in the manifesto, of course, it says face-to-face conversations. We can have a lot of conversations that aren't very good, aren't very clear, and don't result in shared understanding. So some structure is helpful.
Mm-hmm. So, and we talked once, you were saying that a lot of people adopt a certain Agile flavor of you know, some sort of process, whether it's Scrum or Kanban or something, but they don't necessarily become product oriented or product driven. Is that what you find a lot out there?
Oh yeah, this has been a passion topic for me for, I don't know, maybe 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was out in the Midwest doing a talk at a local Agile group, and the title of the talk, which was a lot about product road mapping, the title of the talk was Products, Not Projects.
Yes.
And I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I got kind of some nasty looks, just people getting set up, you know, because folks are now, thank goodness, there's a greater awareness that, you know, you're getting the value from the product,
Yes.
not the project.
Yes.
And I think, honestly, in many ways, the Agile community is a little missed the boat, at least maybe now that's changing, with being so project-centric, so just delivery-centric, and missing the whole point, which is the customers and, you know, being product-led in all the work that we do, and customer-focused, you know, product-led and customer-focused.
Right, right.
So,
yes. That makes a lot of sense. So do you find customers of yours are open to this message? Do they acknowledge it as a problem and then seek help?
oh yes, definitely. Even one big topic in that space, when people start to realize, oh yeah, the value is really in the product, we need to be product-led, get closer to customers, pay attention to the discipline, the art and science of product management.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, particularly in medium and large organizations, that is a sore point is defining the product in the first place.
Mm. Yes.
Because so many organizations have all these little teams, they all have their own little backlogs, and they're not looking holistically at the product. So they're,
Mm-hmm.
doing things in their world, and they're not really, that's called local optimization, and they're not looking at the bigger picture in a unified, cohesive way.
Right. Right.
So there's an understanding, yeah, maybe we're thinking of our product too narrowly. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's why we're having trouble prioritizing. Maybe that's why we're having trouble having the customers be happy. That's, maybe that's why our teams aren't feeling connected to the customer, to the product.
Yeah.
We're not getting the outcomes that we hope for. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's a typical root cause for this? Like what leads to this? You're saying, I've definitely seen this. I've seen teams with their own backlogs, but they're just a little piece of the puzzle. They're part of the product, but they're not looking at the whole thing. I've seen it again and again and again. What's the, kind of, what are some possible root causes you see of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but one is still being project centric.
Yeah.
So we need to do this thing, and that's part of it. So we have projects, so teams have their little backlogs around a project. I think also, I think it's a shared responsibility both on the technology product development side and on the product management side, because
Mm-hmm.
we have this history of, all right, the PMs, meaning product managers,
Yeah.
or business owners, whatever, sort of say, hey, IT people, technology people, and this is particularly true in internal, where the product's for your internal use as opposed to commercial. They'll say, here, go build this. And it's a throw it over the wall between these communities.
Mm.
And you get into contract games and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But that's also true in commercial software companies.
Mm-hmm.
The product development people there can be this schism where, and I think, Josh, that some of it is organization structure.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There's some kind of like barrier there, because I'm in product management, you're in product development or engineering or dev, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to throw you this and I'll throw you this back, right? And they haven't unified around their core purpose, which is serving customers with a product.
Right. And so that's definitely, yeah. I mean, the organizational structure, like you're saying, it's classic. I mean, it's so classic to see this kind of chasm between product and development. When are we going to get out of this? I mean, how many decades have to pass before people realize they need to actually work together as one customer-driven product group? I mean, I don't get it.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating. The positive thing is that people are recognizing
Mm-hmm.
that is an issue, that's a problem. And, I think like in the Agile community has always said value, 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 value. We're all about value, but they really haven't, and I'm sort of being very critical here, but there hasn't been clarity about value for what, and what do we mean by that V word?
Yes. Yes.
And
It's
whose
vague.
value? Whose
Mm-hmm.
value? Because there's another problem, and you've seen this, I know, because you've talked about like badass customers, right? The
Mm-hmm.
focus on customer becoming more accentuated. I think in past it was thought about business value was the only thing we focus on,
Right.
and not focusing on the customer. But one of the things that I found really helpful over the years is when you think about customer, or that S word, the dirty S word, stakeholders,
Oh.
that there are really three constituents here.
Mm-hmm.
You have the business, and I like to call them partners, not stakeholders. Business partners, right? The technology partners, and of course the customers.
Mm-hmm.
As partners.
Yes.
And many teams emphasize one over the other.
Right.
I mean, you could go overboard with the customer partner and try to make your customers so happy and wonderful that you put yourself out of business, or you promise things that are not feasible yet from a technology point of view.
Yes.
So you have to balance, but with the deference to the customer.
So that diagram, you're looking for the where the Venn diagram crosses over between partners, customers,
Mm-hmm.
and what was the third one? Sorry.
Business, customer, business, technology customers.
Yeah.
Partners, rather.
Yeah.
So 3 partners: customer, business, technology.
Yeah.
And understand what they value.
Sure.
And that can change with time.
Well, because look at Zoom. We've been looking at Zoom lately saying, there's not enough safety in this product. And clearly that's something that may have been said by the technology partners,
Yeah.
but wasn't being heard necessarily by the others, the stakeholders, i.e. business partners, or, customers aren't necessarily asking for it until they discover the holes in the security that exists, when a large number of people start using the product. That
Or
balance. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, no, that's a great example. Or if they had a savvy product manager who recognized that, okay, in our roadmap, we want to be able to scale across blah, blah markets, and that the safety of the product, the security of the product was going to become really high value. And
Right.
let's start doing some experiments to try doing that scaling, and then marketing's in parallel looking at that market. So,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at the long-term health and well-being and safety of the product that could have been avoided if
Yes.
there, that forethought had been, and that's product leadership.
Right. Right. And not a lot of organizations are proactive. They're very reactive. I mean, I remember hearing a story about Spotify. There was a very, very talented architect within Spotify who understood that at some point they're going to be allowing signups to occur to the service. Yes, you're signing up for Spotify for the first time, but they'd always allowed that through the web. They'd never done it on mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And this fellow knew that they were going to allow it on mobile at a certain point. And so he said, listen, here's the infrastructure we have to get in place now before you roll out your signups via mobile. And if we don't do it, we're going to have trouble. And the board, or whoever he talked to, the higher ups, basically blessed it. And it was a proactive move. So they did all this work, which was ultimately in the name of scaling gracefully. And sure enough, when they did roll out mobile signups, it scaled beautifully. There were no hiccups. It was a proactive, technology-driven move for ultimately the benefit of the business.
Right.
That's
an
me,
awesome example.
and that's an example of what you're saying. You're saying the balance has to be right.
Right. So maybe there was, if you flip into the product management mindset, from a product leadership point of view, they're looking at scaling the product. The outcome they're looking for is increased customer adoption.
Right.
So in order to do that, you have to have the capability for potentially people to sign up on a mobile device. And they, no doubt, did some experimenting to test whether that was true and what the experience was. And so that data in combination with partnering with technology, led them to that positive outcome.
Yes.
And just think about the adoption rate of that product. It's stunning.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely stunning. Yeah, I mean, we don't know all the factors behind the success of it, but it's certainly it's nice to look at places where they're doing it right.
Yeah.
We tend to focus a lot of times on all of the disasters, like the Iowa caucus voting that just happened, and that disaster there. It's just like
and the disaster that we're of course all suffering from right now in our isolation and our the current pandemic.
Yes, a complete lack of making safety a prerequisite. So maybe not a complete lack, but certainly a lot that could be desired.
Yes, and the importance of data, paying attention to data.
Yes.
And leadership. Okay, we could go down a lot of conversation on this one.
Well, speaking of learning from the past, you were early in the whole area of retrospecting and retrospectives. Can you share some of your early learnings about that and your background in that?
Yeah, we back in take the rollback machine. Back in 2002, we had the first retrospective workshop gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And Norm Kurth, inspired by Norm Kurth's book, Project Retrospectives, a handbook for team reviews. We gathered a group of like-minded folks, and I don't even remember who started it, but we gathered together in a funky hotel called the Sylvia Beach Hotel on the coast of Oregon, with crashing waves and cliffs. It was a magnificent place.
I've been there.
And, okay, you know the Sylvia Beach,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have this cool thing where in the living room, anybody who stays there that's an author, there's a book spine with your book, and you get to sign it. And that was so cool. And every room is named after and themed after an author.
Yes,
right?
I've stayed in the Dr. Seuss room.
Oh, you lucky guy! Yeah, that's where Norm liked to stay.
Uh-huh.
I was in the F. Scott Fitzgerald room with a bottle of gin on the counter.
Very nice.
Not real gin, believe me. And Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, yes.
That was a really creepy room.
Oh, my.
All black, and I'm not kidding. There was a stuffed raven in the corner.
Oh, God.
When I got there and I found I was assigned to that room, I meekly went up to the housekeeper and tried to see, is there another room I could? I couldn't. I had to stay in that room.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, so we had these wonderful gatherings, and we used open space.
Yes.
For the week. I think we start on a Sunday and end on a Friday. And we would, we had really great sessions, a lot of really important conversations. And I think the thing that this little story, one of the stories that I told you, Josh, was about the birth of really what people call sprint or interim retrospectives.
Yes.
So this was the second gathering, 2003,
Mm-hmm.
and I proposed a session on, I don't recall what I called it, but a session on doing more frequent retros.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was interested in that. So there were no other parallel sessions. So we were all together for this, that were there that year. And because my experience was I was working at a pharmaceutical at the time, and we were working on a clinical trial product, and we were using interim and incremental development approaches. So it was early days, and Agile wasn't even a cool term at that point in time. And I was finding that we would do these, stopping points retros, and of course inspired by the spirit of Norm's book. So what happened there is we created basically a taxonomy. And the taxonomy was end of project retros, which was really the beginning with Norm's book. And then there was something called interim retrospectives. Mm-hmm. And then and that was it. And then under interim, and I was looking this up before we talked, there was something called heartbeat retros, where
yes.
like every week you do they're called heartbeat. Then there was something called work chunk, and that was because there were people there doing waterfall. So it was like, some work, basically waterfall milestone deliverable. Mm-hmm. And then there was something called custom. And custom would be because something happened that you have to address. For example, there was somebody at that gathering who was in the US Coast Guard, and they would do retros after oil spill. In fact, that had happened that year.
Oh, yes.
Right. And Norm even talks about, firefighters do retros.
Yes.
Go back. So we had these three types of interim: heartbeat, custom, and work chunk. And that heartbeat retro was what I understand. I had some conversations with Diana and Esther about this. Esther, I believe what we recall was that Esther went back to Scrum Alliance and discussed this idea with them, and then they adopted this idea of doing, sprint retrospectives.
Yes. Okay.
So,
okay.
It was a really incredible experience going to these events. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, retro is so key to learning and improving. I mean, and that's what it's all about. So, do you find people are, these days when they're doing their retrospectives, do they actually improve, or obviously any practice can be, it made to work well, or just adopted in a cargo cult fashion?
Yeah, yeah. It's a mix. Unfortunately, I see a lot of teams on the technology side that sort of go through the motions, and they take an hour, they do a couple of standard retro activities, and things don't really change. I mean, in Toyota Production Systems, the idea was when you do these improvements, whether you're using a kata or whether you're using like a retro approach, you pick one thing and that item goes to the top of your backlog. It's the most important thing to do. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really elevating improvement.
Right.
And I think we forget about that on many teams.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm passionate about and trying to open up in the product management community is using these retros, using product retrospectives.
Ah,
So,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Focusing on the product and what are we learning from the customer, as well as, how we work together as a
Right.
product team, how we work together with product development.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, what I've seen is if we really start focusing on, look at the qualitative and quantitative data around the product, what is that telling us, and introduce that as a discipline,
Right.
That would be very helpful and brings in product development, of course. Story.
That's yeah. I mean, so it seems like to me, my friend Matt Barcom has said this, that once you start talking about product, you get invited to different meetings than if you're just talking agile. Are you
Yes.
finding that to be the case?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I think we have a schism in the product management community and the agile community. I think we have an unhealthy thing going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wrote a blog called "Am I a Product Manager or a Product Owner?" Two-part blog, because there's so much. Not that term has caused a lot of confusion.
Right.
But I think that the agile community, rightly so, focusing on practices and disciplines to make product development better, but missing the point on product management because has caused a little bit of a rift, or maybe a lot of rift, with product management, because product management, there's a lot of strategic work that needs to be done. And the product development stuff, engineering and dev, is typically, and it doesn't need to be this way, but it's typically seen as, build it, deliver all the tactical stuff.
Yes.
And so just like we had this sort of a throw it over the wall internally with business people and technical people, we have this at a meta level with product management and the agile technology community.
Yeah, this topic, it drives me nuts, because like, I think when you get a whole cross-functional team, or whatever term you want to use, there's like balanced teams, whatever people say, but when you get an entire real team focused on outcomes for the customer, and basically being adults, like, okay, if you need to know about like financial constraints that we're within, right? Because I mean, anyone can come up with an idea that costs them an arm and a leg, and you'll never make back any kind of return on investment. But when you empower a team to actually go after some important objectives, or initiative, then anyone could suggest an idea. It's not like all great ideas have to come from the PM.
Right.
I mean, I constantly tell stories of where sometimes even a lowly developer came up with an idea that became an incredibly important part of the product.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully that was allowed to happen, rather than saying, oh, no, that's not your job. You just build stuff. The PM is the one that comes up with what to build. That seems nuts to me.
Yeah.
You're not tapping into the human potential there. So I'm not a big fan of the product owner term, never have been.
Yeah, me too. I agree. That is, I think that's the attitude about the technology engineering, being not collaborating fully with them is starting, is moving away. So
Right.
I've seen a lot of PMs and a lot of conversations and talks and blogs about how to work with engineering and so forth, as though they're like this contaminated thing that you have to stay away from. But okay, so let's talk about, I mean, just think about it. Imagine that there's no org chart.
Right.
And we have a clarity around, we know what our product is, and we
Right.
know who our customers are.
Right.
We're all on the same team.
Yep.
It's like,
and that seems to I think to a lot of people that seems crazy. Like, in other words, their beginning of process is, tell me the roles and responsibilities. And that's how they have to start out, is I got to know my roles and responsibilities. Who has which role, who has what responsibilities. They can't even conceive of just a nebulous group of people going after something, going after an important objective or initiative. Whereas, I mean, of course, it's never nebulous. You have to have the right skills in the room, or not in the room, let's say distributed as we are, but the right people on the bus, as it said, going after something. To me, there's magic in that. And I mean, we run a simulation where, you know, we give people really clear roles and responsibilities, and it's disaster. Because they have to stick to their roles and responsibilities in this simulation. They can't, you know, it's silos. It's exactly what we were talking about earlier in the conversation. And then later they get to just self-organize however they want, and they're far more productive.
Yeah, it really starts with having a clear, shared purpose.
Aha, beautiful. Was that in your earlier books? Because I know you've written other books. You have, you know, the earlier book on collaboration. You know, you've written a bunch of books on requirements. You know, so requirements by collaboration, did that get into that topic?
Yes, in the sense that the context for that book is about planning and designing and facilitating collaborative workshops. And I'm using the term workshop not to be a training course.
Yeah.
Where, you know, the right group of people are come together with shared purpose.
Okay.
And so in that book, what I discovered, I sort of fell into, I have to write this book, because I was doing a lot of these sessions at many different organizations where people needed to get on the same page about what they were building or changing right around the product. And requirements was almost like the topic that we can collaborate around to get shared understanding. Well, I mean, it kind of is. And so one of the early types of workshops you would run would be a visioning workshop and a purpose kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other, that P word, is in that book. That book was written in 2002 and almost actually went into the Agile series, Alistair's Agile series back in the day. But I said, no, we'll keep it in a generic space. Right. But what I sort of found was, to use an alliterism to figure out how you structure this collaborative engagement, you need to have purpose, the right participants. You need to have clarity on place, and it could be distributed or same time, same place. You need to have clarity around products for the workshop, what's coming out and what's coming in to the workshop. And you need to have your shared understanding of how you're going to participate, like those ground rules. Right. And then you need the process, which is the agenda. Right.
I love it.
So those 6 Ps, and I found that I use those not just for workshops around, you know, visioning and requirements, but strategic planning, building a roadmap, you know, release planning. And so the P word is first. I mean, the purpose, that first purpose.
Interesting. No, that's timeless. That what you just said is those 6 Ps. I mean, I don't see that changing anytime soon.
No, I agree.
That's really nice.
That was written so many years ago, but it's that structure just works for any kind of collaborative engagement. Yeah,
you need to like take these old things from the old books and bring them out and reblog them and stuff. Because I mean, I think there's so much wisdom. There's so much wisdom that's already been shared, and people just don't know about it.
It's true.
Uh,
That's true.
you know,
New generations come and we want to say we invented that. I had that conversation with Ron Jeffries at an Agile conference years ago. I don't remember what the topic was, but everybody was, oh, this is like so cool, so new. And I'm like, Ron, blah, blah, talked about this and wrote about this 10 years ago. And he made that comment, well, every generation wants to feel like they invented it and it's theirs so they can embrace it, not something from the past. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's certainly truth there.
Yeah.
So you're finding in your path in the Agile space, obviously you're now product driven, helping you help mostly Agile teams get back to focusing on product?
Well, a lot of what I'm doing these days is working with product teams, product managers, product teams, and at the same time with product development.
Right.
So, for example, with a client that I'm working with now, they came beginning issues with, well, we're having trouble with our product development, and I'm, okay, that's fine. What's going on with product management? How's the product leadership? How are they collaborating with the team? So now what we're doing is we're working with both product management and product development in parallel, right?
Yeah.
So, that's critical.
So that's the discover to deliver, your infinite loop.
Yeah. I mean, we need to have product leadership. We need to have clarity around the product. And product management, it's a nascent discipline. It really isn't that, it hasn't been around that long.
Yeah.
And so bringing together the principles of Agile with the discipline of product management, that's where I'm really keen to make a difference. And it just makes the work more joyful and customers happier.
Yes.
And that's what makes me happy.
So that's what it's all about. So, I think, where can people learn your latest stuff? Is there a blog that they ought to be looking at too?
Yeah, they can go to ebgconsulting.com.
Okay.
And, /blog. So there's a bunch of resources, but that's where I've got a number of the what is your product blog, and am I a product manager or product owner? And I've got about a backlog, about 6 things to blog.
Right.
And that would probably be a good place to start.
Excellent. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting during this crazy period where we're all indoors, and wish I could see you at a conference or something, but
I'll give you a virtual hug.
Okay. I think we're both wearing purple, so
yeah, that's the color to be. And your purple flowers in the back.
Oh yes, and you have purple flowers too, don't you?
Purple fake flowers.
Okay.
Not yet, not in the Northeast yet.
Well, anyway, thank you for coming onto the show and sharing your wisdom. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with others and subscribe. We really appreciate you watching or listening, and thanks again.
Thanks for what you do with the community, Joshua.
Oh, my pleasure.